So we're now going to hear from Eva. Eva Kurilova is a writer for Redux Online magazine, and the title of her talk is Sex-Based Rights in Canada Begin in Alberta. So over to you, Eva.
So I am a writer. I write for Redux. I also have my own Substack, and I write for a Substack called The Distance. And at these two places, I've been tracking kind of the development of the pushback against gender ideology in Canada, which has been very slow, very small, but it is starting. It actually started in New Brunswick when the premier there changed the sort of rules around changing children's names and pronouns in schools. And the next province to follow that was Saskatchewan. And, I was sitting there thinking, okay, here in Alberta, like, when are we going to start? When are we going to start doing this? Our province should definitely do something. We have a conservative government. We have a conservative premier. And early November of 2023, the UCP, the United Conservative Party, had their annual general meeting. And finally, Danielle Smith, our premier, for the first time, started talking about parental rights, namely about knowing, what schools are doing with your children. And at that same meeting, there was two proposals that the delegates passed. So one referenced schools and one referenced women's jails, which was really good to see. Because obviously we have an issue here in Canada of men self-IDing into women's prisons. That's mostly a federal issue, but in provincial jails, that's a problem as well. And so that was fantastic. I thought, great, something's finally happening. And little did I know that a few days later, I would receive an invitation to consult with the premier in person. And so I was quite shocked because I didn't expect this at all. And so I had about a week to prepare. I had two other friends that were going to be there with me. All of us are gay. And so we actually weren't even really told what we would be speaking about. So the three of us had a lot of calls, and we decided, okay, we're really going to try and hammer home the child transition issue because that's like really important. That's a winning issue, we think. So we knew we had just a half-hour meeting. So we kind of hashed out, okay, we're going to really tackle this. And November 15th, or 16th, I don't know, we finally met with her. And, up until the moment that we met with her, I thought this is some kind of trick. This is, we're going to get ambushed, like the TRAs are going to get us. But lo and behold, it was the premier. And also Rob Anderson, the executive director of the premier's office, was there. And we had a really good talk. She actually went over. We actually talked for 45 minutes. She had a meeting after us, but she was really interested in the issue. You could tell she really cared. She knew it was a problem. She wasn't completely like 100% up to speed on everything, but she was really trying to understand. She was taking a lot of notes. I had a chance to really tell her about the harms of like puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, to tell her about what's happening to kids in schools, to tell her about my concerns that young girls like me specifically were getting transitioned, young gender nonconforming girls who could get swept up in this. And she was really listening. Like, I really got the sense that she wants to move on this. We weren't the only people she consulted with. You'll hear from Linda Blade, of course, she consulted with her as well, and other people. And so we left the meeting feeling really hopeful. This was mid-November. This was before she went off on a trip after that. Then it was the holidays. So we didn't hear anything for a while. And then January 31st, 2024, as you've heard already, she released a video where she had a whole host of proposed policies. There was kind of tackling gender in three areas, in the education system, in the health system, and in sports, which is, again, thanks to Linda. And so that was just fantastic. Like, we felt so thrilled that this had gone through. And I actually got a phone call that day from one of the people who had set this up. And he said, because we weren't sure how much influence we had. There was other people she talked to, but he told me, after your meeting, it really seemed like you guys helped and had an influence and really instilled in her the need to do this and to go forward with this. So about a week after that, there was a roundtable held in Edmonton by Minister Tanya Furr. She's the Minister for the Status of Women, Arts, Culture, and Inclusion, which is their word for the alphabet community. They use this god-awful acronym here in Alberta, 2SLGBTQ. I don't even say it. But anyway, so the roundtable was for the members of the alphabet community. So myself and three other friends went up to Edmonton to support the policies. And there was about 7 other people there who were against them, trans activists. And that was interesting. I've described it as Twitter in real life because there was a lot of yelling, there was a lot of tears from the other side, the people who oppose these policies. They were telling the minister that she's going to cause kids to kill themselves. They were saying the premier was going to cause that. They were being very, very histrionic, very emotionally manipulative. There was one particular man there, Christopher Wells. He's a professor at McEwan University. He co-opted, he would press to speak and he would speak forever. Like, we only had 90 minutes and he was really just accusing her of the most awful things. They were calling on her to resign. Kudos to the minister. She really kept her cool. She just kept a straight face. She listened. And right afterwards, the 7 of them that were there in opposition, they scurried away because media was waiting downstairs because Christopher Wells had tipped them off, even though this meeting was supposed to be quite secret. And they went, and there was quite a lot of networks there. There was Global, City TV, CTV, Edmonton Herald, and the 7 of them kind of stood, huddled in front of the cameras, calling on the premier and the minister to resign, saying how awful this was, And we were waiting around because I wanted my chance to speak as well. But it really seemed like they were speaking to them for like 45 minutes. Eventually, I walked to one of the anchors and I was like, hey, look, we were there too, and we were there in support of the policies. Like, you might want to get our side as well. And actually, to my surprise, they did. They wrapped up with the other guys, and they were in a rush. They had to go see the minister, but they did allow me to speak. And they asked a lot of good questions. I was really happy. Lo and behold, when it came time for the news segments, they showed a little 5-second clip, but I was still really happy that every network that was there did actually include me, and they did give, they did show the reality that there was another side there. So that was pretty huge for Canada. And so, as people have said already, Danielle Smith could really use a lot of support because the entire media is against her. There's this consistent narrative that she's responsible for kids killing themselves. It's quite atrocious. A few weeks ago, Justin Trudeau came to Alberta and he sat down and he met with a lot of the people that were at our round table, but of course, nobody from our side, only the people who were there against them, right? So it seems like an uphill battle, but I will say that the NDP, the opposition party, they're currently having a leadership race. And if you've noticed, the candidates for leadership, they haven't really been talking about this issue because I think they're starting to get scared that it's not a winner for them if they talk about child transition. They've been sort of quiet on it. There are some MLAs that are talking about it, but they're not running for leadership. So I think that despite what the media is saying, most people in the polling and stuff, they do support these policies. I just think a lot of people are too scared to say it publicly. So I do have a lot of hope, and I think that this is a really fantastic start. It's a small start. We have a long way to go. Federally, Canada is still pretty screwed, but I'm really proud that in Alberta, this is beginning.